The galaxy was a noisy place. Star empires bickered, merchant guilds argued over tariffs, and ancient councils debated for centuries about the shape of treaty tables. But across all those stars, one species had become infamous for a single irritating talent: humans. Oh, they weren't the strongest nor the most technologically advanced. Some races lived 10 times longer. Some could crush starships with their minds. And some had ships that bent physics into knots. But humans, they were the ones who somehow survived every impossible situation. It was maddening. Take, for example, the story of the diplomatic disaster at the Council of Aurix. The council chamber was a masterpiece of alien architecture, suspended in orbit around a dying sun. 12 species sat in their carved alcoves, the air thick with incense, ozone, and the low hum of 1,000 translators. They had gathered to resolve a simple matter, a trade dispute between the Drath and the Ilvari. Both species had been squabbling for 3 decades over mineral rights, and tempers had reached the throw warships at each other's stage. Into this tense arena strolled the human ambassador, Elias Monroe. He was late. Everyone else had been seated for hours, staring at each other across the shimmering energy table, rehearsing their grievances. Elias, however, arrived with a coffee mug in one hand, a half-crumpled data pad in the other, and the faint look of a man who had taken a wrong turn somewhere around Neptune.
Sorry,
Elias said, sliding into his seat as if he just wandered into a neighborhood cafe.
Hyperlane traffic. You know how it is.
The Ilvari delegation, crystalline beings who spoke in pure resonant tones, made a sound like a church organ falling down a staircase.
"You are late to sacred arbitration,"
their leader intoned.
"Such insult."
Yes, deep offense, breach of etiquette.
Elias interrupted, waving his hand dismissively.
Let's skip the dramatic throat clearing, shall we? I've had 2 hours of sleep and 1 very bad sandwich, so I'd like to wrap this up before I pass out.
The chamber froze. Aliens were used to endless pomp, the ritual exchange of symbols, the lengthy preambles, the mutual listing of grievances. Humans, on the other hand, seemed allergic to ceremony. They just cut straight through it, as if formality were optional. The Drath warlord leaned forward, all scales and scar tissue.
"Human, you presume much. My people's honor."
Yeah, about that.
Elias said, sipping his coffee.
Here's the thing. You don't actually want this war. You can posture all you like, but your fleet's stuck in dry dock with half its reactors failing, and the Ilvari here know it. On the other hand, Ilvari,
He turned to the crystalline leader.
you can't actually use those mines without Drath shipping routes, and I've seen your attempt at logistics. Let's just say you're not exactly famous for punctual deliveries.
The Drath warlord's jaw dropped. The Ilvari let out a dissonant chord of outrage. The other delegates shifted uncomfortably, and Elias just kept going.
So here's my proposal. Drath runs the shipping, Ilvari handles extraction. Profits split 50-50. You both save face, you both get rich, and I get to finally go home and take a nap.
Dead silence. Then, against all probability, the Drath warlord began to laugh. It was a horrible grinding sound like boulders colliding. The Ilvari, insulted but grudgingly practical, gave a slow ripple of agreement. Within 10 minutes, the treaty was signed. The council erupted. Other delegates stared in disbelief. Negotiations that should have taken months had been resolved in a single coffee-fueled rant. And that was only the beginning. Word spread quickly. Humans didn't just negotiate, they improvised. They found shortcuts. They poked holes in centuries of ritual and exposed the obvious truths everyone else was too proud or too stubborn to admit. A month later, the Magreen were about to storm out of talks over border patrols. Elias bribed them to stay with a bag of salted peanuts.
Try these,
He said.
salty, crunchy, addictive. Now, where were we?
The Magreen fell instantly in love with the snack, and border patrols were settled within the hour. During another dispute, the towering Rathani insisted they would never share territory with primitive warmbloods. Elias bet their war chief he could outdrink him in fermented root liquor. 3 mugs later, the Rathani war chief was passed out on the table, and Elias had secured not only shared territory, but also an open trade corridor. The council's scribes ran out of space in their ledgers trying to record each bizarre human tactic. Sometimes it was wit, sometimes bluff, sometimes just sheer unhinged nerve. One time, when faced with 2 species threatening to duel over planetary ownership, Elias declared,
Fine. Let's settle it the old-fashioned way. Rock, paper, scissors.
No one knew the rules, of course, so he taught them. They played. The losing side demanded best out of 3, then best out of 5, then best out of 7. By the time the game concluded, both sides were laughing too hard to remember they had been ready to start a war. Of course, not everyone was pleased. The Valar, an ancient race of scholars, issued a formal protest.
This behavior undermines the dignity of the council.
They said.
Humans treat diplomacy as a farce.
Elias shrugged.
Farce that works is still diplomacy.
But the more humans solved impossible disputes with snacks, games, and sheer gall, the harder it became to deny results. Trade flowed. Borders stabilized. Wars fizzled into arguments about delivery schedules. In private, alien ambassadors began to whisper among themselves.
Do the humans actually know what they're doing?
Surely not. Look at them. They're chaos wrapped in flesh.
And yet,
the galaxy kept bending to human improvisation. One night, long after the council had adjourned, Elias sat with a younger aide from another human delegation. She asked him the question aliens never quite managed to phrase.
How do you do it? How do you walk into a room full of beings who could tear you in half and somehow walk out with a deal?
Elias leaned back, sipping the last of his cold coffee. He looked tired, but there was a glint in his eye.
It's simple,
He said.
Everybody else is too busy trying to look clever. We just try to be clever. Doesn't always work, sure, but 9 times out of 10, the galaxy isn't ready for someone who plays the game sideways.
He grinned.
And, when in doubt, bring peanuts.
And so the legend of humanity spread. The species that negotiated with jokes, bribed with snacks, and bluffed their way into galactic history. The ones who could walk into a council chamber on the brink of war and walk out with a treaty, sometimes with a hangover, sometimes with a bag of peanuts, but always somehow with peace. Imagine this. Humanity finally gets invited to the big table. First contact. A chance to prove we're not just a bunch of hairless apes with rockets, but a species worthy of galactic respect. The ISS venture is chosen to carry the first official human delegation. At the helm, Commander Sarah Cade, diplomat, strategist, professional, cool under pressure type. She'd spent her entire career preparing for this. Every textbook, every training sim, every boring lecture on xenocultural sensitivity. And yet, in less than 10 minutes, her team managed to nearly start an interstellar war with nothing more than smiles, chocolate, and a thumbs up. The docking bay doors slid open, revealing the Thrixians, insectoid, majestic, shimmering like stained glass statues brought to life. Their antennae swayed in perfect unison, releasing scents the humans' translators couldn't fully catch. This was history, the first moment 2 intelligent species would stand face to face. Commander Cade took a deep breath, stepped forward, and did what any polite human would do. She held out her hand for a handshake. The effect was instant. The Thrixian leader's wings snapped open like an umbrella in a hurricane. Guards surged forward, mandibles clacking like knives on a cutting board. Dr. Alvarez, the cultural analyst, went pale.
Commander, you just challenged their leader to single combat.
Cade yanked her hand back so fast you'd think she touched a hot stove.
Right, okay. No handshakes. Got it.
Behind her, Lieutenant Harris muttered.
well, at least you didn't curtsy.
Trying to recover, Cade flashed her warmest smile. Her team followed suit, big, toothy grins under the docking lights. The aliens recoiled in horror. Several hissed. One even ducked behind another's wings. Alvarez groaned.
Of course. Teeth. In their culture, that's a predator's I'm about to eat you face.
Cade slammed her lips shut. Harris hadn't caught on. His nervous grin stretched even wider.
Lieutenant,
Cade hissed.
close your mouth before they think you're sizing them up for lunch.
Harris froze, face twitching between smile and grimace. He looked less like a diplomat and more like a man battling constipation. Then came the perfectly chosen gift. Ensign Patel, eager to save the day, stepped forward with a sleek case.
This
He announced proudly.
is humanity's finest delicacy.
The lid opened to reveal Earth's treasure. Gourmet dark chocolate. The humans smiled hopefully. The Thrixians did not. A ripple of disgust passed through the group. Several turned away. One made a gagging noise that needed no translation. Alvarez rubbed his temples.
To them, brown food is associated with decay, waste. We just offered their leader a very expensive box of dung.
Patel stammered.
But it's Swiss.
Cade whispered.
Congratulations, Ensign. You just became the galaxy's first interstellar bathroom joke.
Things spiraled. Harris, desperate to signal reassurance, raised a thumbs up. The docking bay exploded into chaos. The Thrixian leader's wings flared. Guards hissed. One actually pulled a spear-like weapon brew off his back. Patel winced.
Oh, great. That means go throw yourself into a black hole.
Cade pinched the bridge of her nose.
Brilliant. In 10 minutes, we've declared war, flashed our predator teeth, offered them a box of excrement, and told them to go die.
World record?
Harris offered weakly. It didn't stop there. The humans had been briefed to sit on the ground in a relaxed posture. Nobody told them that crossing your legs, human style, meant mocking the egg-laying process. The moment Harris sat down, half the aliens hissed in offense. Patel yanked him back up. Alvarez muttered,
Congratulations, Lieutenant. You just insulted their mothers.
and then came the sneeze. Poor Patel, nerves shot to hell, let out a loud, sudden sneeze. The translator struggled, then announced proudly, "Challenge cry. Issued." The Thrixians froze. Several raised their antennae in alarm. Patel's eyes widened.
I just sneezed. I wasn't challenging anybody.
Alvarez sighed.
Well, tell that to the 10 warriors who now think they have to duel you at dawn.
It was going down in flames. Humanity's shining moment of first contact was becoming a blooper reel. And then, in the middle of the chaos, Commander K did the last thing anyone expected. She laughed, not a polite chuckle, not a diplomatic smile, a full, loud, unrestrained laugh that echoed across the docking bay. The Thrixians froze, antennae quivering in confusion. Cade threw up her hands.
We're a disaster, aren't we?
She said aloud. Then she pantomimed the whole mess. Pretended to duel herself with an imaginary handshake. Flashed a giant fake predator smile, then covered her mouth in mock horror. Held up the chocolate box, gagging dramatically. Sneezed so hard she almost toppled over, then gave herself a thumbs up and staggered backward like she'd been blasted into space. Her team gawked. Harris whispered,
She's lost it.
but the Thrixian leader tilted his head. His wings fluttered slowly. Then, unbelievably, he made a sound. A buzzing, clicking rhythm. Alvarez blinked.
Commander, I think they're laughing.
And just like that, the tension broke. Cade stepped forward, open palms raised.
We will make mistakes, many mistakes, but we are here to learn, to laugh at ourselves, to find a way to understand.
The translator echoed her words in strange clicks and hisses. The Thrixian leader lowered his forelimb, then slowly extended it forward. Not in challenge, not in anger, but in invitation. Cade mirrored the gesture. A new tradition was born. Not a handshake, not a bow, but something in between. The first real bridge between humanity and another species was not built on perfection. It was built on humility. Back on the Venture, the humans finally collapsed into their seats.
Well,
Harris muttered.
that could have gone worse.
Worse?
Patel groaned.
We almost started a war, with chocolate and a sneeze.
Alvarez smirked.
History will remember this. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our diplomacy. It's not our technology. It's not even our survival instinct.
Cade raised an eyebrow.
Then what is it?
Alvarez grinned.
Our ability to screw up spectacularly and somehow turn it into friendship.
And that's how humanity's first contact was remembered. Not for speeches or flawless protocol, but for the blunders that almost wrecked it, and for the laughter that saved it. Because in a galaxy full of rigid traditions and ancient grudges, maybe what the universe really needed was a species unafraid to sneeze, laugh, and carry on. If you enjoyed this HFY tale, hit like, subscribe, and share it with a fellow sci-fi fan. And let me know in the comments, what human habit do you think would confuse aliens the most? Until next time, this is Sci-Fi Star Stories, signing off.